How's it going, everybody? My name is Rinzler here, back again for another video, and tonight we're going to be talking about fan fictions. I'm trying out a different format here. You can basically consider it a podcast, except you don't got to download it or whatever. You can just listen to me talk, or if you want to. This is going to be a different kind of video. I'm not really going to be talking via script. I'm just going to be talking from the heart here. I normally script all my other videos, but today I'm just gonna talk, talk about some stories or whatever, talk about my fan fiction career, what I've seen in the fan fiction community over the years, stuff like that. So, basically, I started out in fan fiction almost 3 years ago now. I started in 2016 on Wattpad, and I was actually originally going to go on fanfiction.net. I tried to go on fanfiction.net because that's where I'd been reading all the fan fictions. I got into fan fictions or whatever after I quit YouTube in 2016. My old channel, the X122, I quit that channel, and then I didn't want to return to YouTube and for a long time. So I was just kind of drifting or whatever. I kind of became a bit of a fitness nut or whatever, but there was other things I wanted to do. I wanted to be a bit more creative. I tried to learn how to cook. I was gonna be a chef. I bought my own apron, but that wasn't really doing it for me. So I started reading fan fiction, and basically, I started to read fan fiction because there were so many couples in like movies and TV shows that I thought should have gotten together, but like they never did get together, or like they were teased, but they never actually got together, or maybe they were just something that nobody else was noticing but me, and so I decided to just put them together. But basically, I was looking up my favorite couples online, and some of my favorite pairings weren't really given a lot of fan fictions to read, like Bond and Jericho from Seven Deadly Sins. I When I first got into the fan fiction stuff, there was hardly like any Bond and Jericho fan fiction anywhere on the net. Like, I don't know if it was because Seven Deadly Sins was still a relatively new anime, because the manga had been going on for a long time, and by the time I got on to the fan fiction community, Seven Deadly Sins had already been around for 2 years in its anime form. So I don't know why it took so long for the Bond and Jericho couple and to truly reach its peak. Like, because when I was first getting into fan fiction, there was only like one or two other stories on Wattpad about this couple, and I remember there was only like one story for them on fanfiction.net. I wasn't reading Archive of Our Own at that point, and I haven't been on there to look up this particular couple. I've been on there to look up other couples, which I'll get to in a minute. But like, there was like nothing written about this couple at all. So basically, I read the few fan fictions that there were online, and I wasn't impressed. I thought that they could have been done better. And I know I'm not trying to be insulting or whatever, because I know that writing fan fiction's not exactly easy. Like, you can get writer's block, you can get disinterested, you can find yourself wanting to make other projects and then saying you'll go back to the old project and then you never do. So I understand that writing fan fiction is not easy. It can be fun, but it's not always easy. So, I understand that. And I'm not trying to bash the people who were writing this at first, because it's clear that at least they did like the couple, but I feel like they weren't doing enough with them. Like, they were teasing them getting together, but then they never actually had them together. Like, the few I was reading had them doing some verbal exchanges, but like they never kissed or embraced or anything like that. And that was a little disappointing to me. So I thought to myself, well, I'm not doing YouTube no more, so why shouldn't I, you know, give this a try? Why shouldn't I, see if I can do it better? I was like, if it's not done right, then why not do it yourself? That's how the saying goes. And I listened to that, and I decided I'm gonna give this a try. So I went online to set up a fanfiction.net account, but that's where my troubles started, because I really did not like fanfiction.net at all. I found their restrictions to be a little bit annoying, so I went on to Wattpad instead. And Wattpad is a free site, and it's primarily for teenage authors or like young adult authors to be using. I'm not sure if there's older authors that use Wattpad or not. Uh, But anyways, that was about 3 years ago. I'm 18 now, so I was probably like 14 or 15 when this was all going on. And so I joined Wattpad instead, and I found it to be a lot more user friendly. I did not link it up with my Facebook account because I've heard that that's a bad idea when it comes to sign up for new sites. Um, so I did not do that, but I found that Wattpad was a very user-friendly website. It gave a lot more creative freedom, and I just had an absolute ball writing fan fictions when I was first getting into it. I remember being a little bit embarrassed writing my first ever fan fiction, which was One Late Night with the Seven Deadly Sins, and it was a Bon and Jericho fan fiction. That fan fiction's gotten like almost 1,000 reads. It's possibly over 1,000 reads, and I haven't checked that particular story in a long time now. But that story got tons of reads, and so I kept writing and writing. And they didn't get a lot of reads at first. Like it was very very slow crawl. Like they didn't start getting super popular until about 5 or 6 months into my Wattpad career. And by that point, I was just writing fan fiction because I thought it was fun, not because I wanted to be popular. And I still don't really want to be popular online. I just want to, write what I want to write. Because that's another thing. Like, I never wrote couples that, like, everybody else was writing necessarily. Like, nobody was writing Bon and Jericho fan fiction. And nowadays, the fan fictions I'm writing, nobody's writing about Batman and Catwoman from Batman Returns. And, like, I don't think anybody's writing Gordon and Alex from Half-Life. I don't write couples that everybody else is writing. I write couples that I want to write. And so that's what I did. I wanted to write stories that nobody else was writing because I felt like they deserved to have more stuff written about them. So I wrote the Bon and Jericho One Late Night, and I really enjoyed writing it. I was a little embarrassed to write it because I was so worried that like somebody was going to come in and ask me what I was doing and then start reading over my shoulder, but luckily that didn't happen. So after One Late Night, I tried my hand at writing a fan fiction based on this little known movie called Little Giants, which is this 1994 kids like sports movie or whatever. And like I think it's a little bit underrated. I think that it gets crapped on a little bit more than it should have. I actually really like the stories and the kids. They feel like natural kids, and I really liked the story. But I really liked the two of the kids in the story, Junior and Becky, the Icebox O'Shea, because throughout that movie they have a lot of flirting, and it's really adorable. It's the pretty boy and the tomboy, and I'm a bit of a sucker for tomboy romance stuff. So when I realized that not a lot of other people were writing for these two, I tried writing because I had so much fun writing the Bon and Jericho stuff that I decided to give Little Giants a shot. And so I wrote this Little Giants fan fiction called What Will They Say? And I hated it. Like, I thought it came out terrible. And my mom told me that she thought it came out terrible. So I didn't want to write Little Giant stuff no more. So I deleted that story and I was like, man, this is embarrassing. I don't want anyone to read this. So I deleted it. And I think that's deservedly so. I don't think it's a good fan fiction. It looked like a some bitch wrote it, and I'm not a some bitch. I was just trying to have a bit of fun. I was being a bit experimental, but it really didn't pay off. So I got rid of that fan fiction real quick. Um, and then I got back on the horse again, kept writing the Bon and Jericho stuff, started writing for King and Deanne, also from Seven Deadly Sins, or Kian, as a lot of people like to call them. Me personally, I'm not the biggest fan or whatever of fan fiction pairing names. Like, I don't like it when they merge names together. I always find it to be a little bit cringy. Like, I was looking up online Harry Potter stuff or whatever, and like, or no, I wasn't looking it up. That's wrong. I was rereading one of my stories, and in the recommended section, there was like a Draco and Hermione fan fiction, and somebody called it Hermione, and I'm like, man, that's cringe. And so I don't ever merge couples' names in any of my stories. It's just not my thing. I find it to be a bit cringe. Some of the pairing names I admit are really clever, but it's just never been my particular cup of tea. Um, but anyway, no offense to people who are into that stuff. It's just not my thing. So I think I was getting a lot better every time I wrote it. My mom said that the story was good, even though she wasn't familiar with the characters at the time. She hadn't seen Seven Deadly Sins yet. I didn't introduce her to it until summer of 2017, I don't think, because she wanted to familiarize herself with the characters so she could actually read my stories. She read my first story and she didn't know the characters, and she said that it could have been a bit more well written. So I worked on improving as a writer a little bit, and I think I got better. The reading counts certainly seem to say that I got better at writing. So yeah, I kept working on it, trying to get better at it, trying to get better at it. And like I was writing Bond and Jericho and King of DM primarily. I gave up on trying to write anything based on a live action property because that Little Giants fan fiction was just so piss poor. But I did kind of venture out of the anime realm a little bit, and I tried my hand at writing just normal cartoon fan fiction. So I wrote Kid Flash and Artemis from the Young Justice cartoon, based on season one, of course, because here's the thing you need to know about me. I don't actually like writing fan fictions for already existing couples. Like, I don't write fan fictions for couples like that are already established. I'm mixing up my words. I'm sorry. Basically, what I mean is I'm not gonna write a fan fiction for a couple that's already been together a long time. Like, I'm not gonna write a fan fiction where like they're married already or something like that. I'm more of the kind of guy that likes to write fan fictions about a couple getting together rather than a couple that's already together. So like I didn't want to write stories about couples that were already together. So I didn't write any Young Justice fan fiction for Wally and Artemis while they were already together. So I never wrote any like season two or season three Young Justice fan fiction. I only ever wrote Artemis and Kid Flash based on season one because by that point they were still fighting and bickering, and I found it a lot more appealing because they were teasing their relationship, but they weren't actually going through with one yet. Which is what made their kiss in the season finale all the more satisfying to me. And after I watched that, I'm like, man, I got to write a fan fiction about this couple now. And so I did that, and people seemed to like it. The second time, anyway. My first Young Justice fan fiction called Valentine's Day in Mount Justice did not do so well. I wrote that fan fiction like 3 months before Valentine's Day. Actually, 3 months, I believe, because I wrote that in like late November or early December. So it was like over 3 months before Valentine's Day, and 2 or 3 months. And like, yeah, it didn't get a lot of reads, and I think that it was a little bit bad. I was writing about like them kissing or whatever and like sharing chocolate in their mouth, and I was like rereading it, and I didn't like it upon reread. But I decided to leave it up just to see if people are interested in seeing me write other things besides Seven Deadly Sins. When that story didn't get much reads, I kind of, you know, didn't. I kind of got less enthused about the idea of writing outside of anime. So I went back to anime stuff. I started writing Soul Eater stuff. My Soul Eater stuff wasn't really getting that much attention. I always really liked Maka and Soul. I always really liked that couple. And I've not written, I'm sorry, I've read a lot of great fan fictions for that couple. I read one really great AU fan fiction for Maka and Soul. For the life of me, I can't remember what website it was on or who wrote it. I'm pretty sure it was on fanfiction.net. I don't recall it being on Wattpad, and I didn't start reading Archive of Our Own until about this year. So I believe it was on fanfiction.net. And basically, in this AU, Maka and Soul haven't met yet, and like Maka is like this nerdy, socially awkward girl, and Soul's like a delivery boy, and he's like delivering packages to Maka's doorstep, and that's how they meet. And I actually really, really like that fan fiction. I cannot remember for the life of me what it's called. I'm gonna look it up and try to find it again. But if you guys know which one I'm talking about, let me know in the comments. It would save me some time searching. But it was a really great story, and after reading that, I wanted to write Soul Eater stuff. My Soul Eater stuff didn't take off like my Seven Deadly Sins stuff did, but I didn't care because, again, I just like to write couples that I want to write, not what everybody else wants me to write. And that's not saying that I ignore my fans. I do have fans, and I do sometimes listen to them, but usually I don't. Like, with previous Seven Deadly Sins fan fiction, mostly with my King and Deanne fan fiction called Nurse Deanne. Nurse Deanne's my second most read fan fiction behind Double Date with the Seven Deadly Sins. Nurse Deanne has gotten a ton of requests to be continued. One time I actually listened. I initially kept it to 2 chapters, and this guy came on and said that and asked if I could do a third chapter. And at that point, I was listening to every request, and so I made a third chapter. And I'm happy that I did because I actually really liked how the third chapter came out. Then recently, and a couple of times last year, somebody asked me if I could make a fourth chapter, and I politely answered no because if I make any more chapters, it's going to be like milking this dry. And also because I don't like writing fan fiction for already existing couples, and Nurse Deanne was a tease story. It was about them first getting together, and I don't like writing stories about already existing couples, which is why I don't write Meliodas and Elizabeth or anything like that, you know? So, that's basically the gist of that. That's why Nurse Deanne is going to always be 3 chapters long. You'll never see a fourth chapter of Nurse Deanne. And if I ever write a fourth chapter, then you can point out this here video and tell me that I lied to you guys, and I'll have to eat my words. But right now, I'm not planning on writing a fourth chapter, and I guarantee you that you'll never see more than 3 chapters of Nurse Deanne. It's never going to be rebooted or anything like that. I don't rewrite my own stories all that often. Sometimes I go back, reread stuff, and make touch-ups, but I don't like scrap something and redo it. So Nurse Deanne will always be there for you guys if you want to read it again. And so yeah, it'll always be there. So yeah. So basically, and then I headed into to December, and I had just seen Zootopia finally for the first time. I skipped it in theaters because it seemed like some cheesy kids movie, and at that point, I wasn't checking the Rotten Tomatoes score on every movie that was coming out, so I didn't know what people thought of certain movies. I usually had my own opinions for things, and sometimes I wish I could go back to those days because now it's a force of habit of me to check online to see if a movie's good before I go see it. And sometimes I would go as far as to read the entire plot just to see if the movie's gonna disappoint me or not. But because I actually remember I read the plot of Avengers Endgame before I went to go see it, and I kind of regret it. Even though that movie kind of did what I thought it was going to do. You know, sometimes I regret it, and sometimes I wish I could go back to just not reading online reviews before I went to go see movies. But anyway, getting back to the story now. I hadn't seen Zootopia yet. I thought it was going to be like some cheesy kids movie, so I didn't bother going to see it in the theater. And then I saw it on Netflix, and I decided to just watch it out of curiosity one day. Because by late 2016, I was beginning to read online reviews. And it had like a 98 on Rotten Tomatoes. So I'm like, holy shit, I gotta go watch this now. And I saw it was conveniently on Netflix, so I watched it. And I fell in love with Zootopia. Zootopia is like my favorite modern day Disney movie. My favorite Disney movie of all time is Mulan, hands down. I love Mulan. But my favorite modern day Disney movie is easily Zootopia. So I started writing Zootopia fanfiction. I wrote Sly Fox, Dumb Bunny, and then I wrote Parking Duty. I think Parking Duty was a bad story. I don't think it was particularly well written. Maybe that's just me. But then again, this was really early in my fan fiction writing career. So looking back, I think that a lot of my stories would have been a lot more well written if I'd written them like nowadays or whatever. But they did get plenty popular, so I'm not complaining or anything. They have a fairly modest read count compared to a lot of my other stories, but Zootopia is not exactly what I'm mostly known for writing. So yeah. And I wrote two other Zootopia fan fictions. I wrote one in early 2017. I believe it was February 2017. I wrote Nightshift. And basically, that one was about Judy and Nick, and they're at the ZPD after hours, and like Mayor Bellwether escapes from her prison cell, and so they have to work together to put her back in again, and they fall in love along the way. That's basically the gist of that story. I still like it upon reread, even though nowadays I'm thinking, why would Bellwether be in Precinct 1 instead of like in a proper prison facility? She tried to kill 10% of the population, I believe, or not kill them, but at least have them like falsely imprisoned. So I mean, that's a pretty big deal. She tried to have Judy murdered. I think that she should have been in a prison. So I don't know why I wrote her to be in Precinct 1, but I think it's a really. I still think the story holds up, and I still like rereading it every now and then. My fourth Zootopia fan fiction, on the other hand, is drastically different from any of the other ones. It's called Dumb Jealousy, and I wrote that story while I was still going through a goth phase, and I was full on goth. I wore all black clothing. I painted my nails black. I wore black eyeshadow, all that stuff. Eventually, I left the goth community because I found the black clothing to be really dark and hot during the winter, and I was starting to kind of come out of my shell a little bit, and so I thought that my goth outfit was holding me back a little bit. So I got rid of that and started, I grew out my natural blonde hair again, stuff like that. But anyway, getting back to the story, while I was still a goth, pretty much all my stories were dark, and so I decided to try and write a dark Zootopia fan fiction. And this was actually supposed to be the first of many darker Disney stories of mine. But that never really came to be because I lost interest in writing Disney fan fictions after Dumb Jealousy, because Dumb Jealousy took me like 5 or 6 months to write. Like I kept changing ideas, I kept adding in chapters, I rushed some chapters, and so I went back and rewrote them again. I changed the entire ending. The ending was supposed to be happy, but I made it a sad ending instead. So I just changed a lot of stuff. I wanted to make like a gritty reality version of the story, because I liked how Zootopia handled their version of the real world, with like the segregation of the predators and the prey from each other, and and all that stuff. I thought there was a lot of potential of making like a darker, more mature story that took place in the same universe. So like I made this fan fiction where Judy gets kidnapped or whatever and sold as a sex slave, which I'm embarrassed to say nowadays because at the time I thought it was like the coolest thing ever, and nowadays it kind of makes me cringe a little bit. Not gonna lie. Um, and that I think that story ended up being 5 or 6, possibly even 7 chapters long. I don't know. It's been a long time. I didn't even bother reading Dumb Jealousy because nowadays I'm a lot more lighthearted, and I'm not as I don't like to write darker stories all that much anymore, which I know is kind of ironic considering I write a lot of Batman Returns stuff nowadays, and Batman Returns is a notoriously dark movie, and Half Life 2, another thing that I write a lot of fan fiction on nowadays. Or I've only written one Half Life fan fiction, and I'm planning on making Half Life videos here on the network as well, um, because I just love Half Life and I want to show it off or whatever. But anyway, nowadays I don't like to write as much dark stuff anymore. I write my stories with happy endings generally because I don't like the idea of stories ending on a sad note, because like that would really bum me out if I was trying to read a fan fiction I was really liking and then it ends on a bad note. So, but at that time, I thought that was like the cool, edgy thing that was gonna help me get more reads because my reads were starting to stagnate because I hadn't been reading, or I hadn't been writing Seven Deadly Sins stuff, which is what I'm mostly well known for writing. So, I went through some name changes as well. I was writing under the name Maximus Anthony for a really long time, and then I changed my name to Lord Ikarai, which is Japanese for love hater, actually, because I was having a bit of a depression stage and I started to, hate on happiness. I don't know. It was a weird time to be me. And of course, nowadays my name on Wattpad is Rinzler Hero, which I almost changed. I almost made the name of this channel Rinzler Hero, but I think this channel's gone through quite enough name changes, so I'm gonna keep it the same. I don't think the constant name changes were exactly helping my read count any. So I was trying to be edgy or whatever, and I was hoping that was going to bring in more readers. It didn't really. The Dumb Jealousy story, I believe, is my most read Zootopia fan fiction, and a lot of people actually seem to like my take on the story, even if it did end on a sour note. Like, there's a lot of darker elements in it, like Nick. He goes through like really bad. He gets like really really sick from like this like festering jealousy inside of him for this guy that Judy's dating, the same guy that would later on kidnap her and force her into, being sold off or whatever. And then like Nick ends up killing that guy. I don't like to spoil my fan fictions, but like I gotta explain why I'm saying this is so dark. And then like at the end of the story, Nick gets arrested after confessing his love to Judy, and like that's how the story ends. And yeah, it's definitely not like a family friendly fan fiction by any sense of the word. But I guess some people got a kick out of what I had to write about. And of course nowadays, as I said, I don't like to write stories like that so often, but I did enjoy writing that one in particular. Even if it could be a pain in the ass. Like some chapters I had fun writing, and some chapters I was like rushing to get through because I had other projects I was more psyched about writing. Because I was trying to write as much fan fiction as I could in 2018 because I was trying to, write this book I had planned and all these fan fictions at the same time because I really wanted to get good at writing. I shouldn't have been rushing projects, but that's what I was doing. It might not seem like it was rushed, but Night Shift was actually really rushed because basically I really wanted to write Night Shift before my February school vacation because I was going up north to visit my father in Vermont, which is where I'm from. I'm from Vermont. I don't live in Vermont anymore. I moved south. We still get winters, but it's not nearly as fucking cold as it was in Vermont. Believe me, Vermont gets to like negative 30 degrees below zero, and like people here bitch about it being cold. It drives me crazy. But anyway, so I was going up to Vermont to visit my father during February vacation, and so I wanted to write Night Shift before I left because I wanted to work on Double Date with the Seven Deadly Sins while I was at my dad's. So Night Shift was actually really rushed because of that. But I think it came out well, all things considered, and I'd honestly say it's probably my best Utopia fanfiction if I had to choose personally. And Double Date with the Seven Deadly Sins is my personal favorite Seven Deadly Sins story I've written. It's my one and only time, I believe, that I've ever written two couples in one fan fiction. I did both King and Deanne and Bon and Jericho in that story. And I guess I did something right because that's my most well-read story. I believe it's over 10,000 reads now. It could be even more. I haven't checked on that in a while. And I'm very proud of Double Date. I'd say it's probably my best fan fiction I've ever written, arguably. I've written a lot of fan fiction that people say is really good. But I have to say I think that's probably my favorite of all the ones I've ever written. I don't think any Seven Deadly Sins story I wrote before or after is as good as that one. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to write a story as good as that one again for that particular couple. Because I've written so many stories for Bon and Jericho over the years. In 2018 in particular, I wrote a couple of Bon and Jericho stories that year. And like every story I was writing at that point was always about like Jericho coming to terms with Bon and Elaine's relationship because I thought that was like the mature thing to do was like have Jericho's like schoolgirl crush or whatever, mean nothing compared to Bon and Elaine's everlasting love, and basically she would have to come to terms. I wrote a story called Jericho's Journal, which was actually inspired to me by Watchmen. The tone of it, or the format, was inspired to me by Rorschach's journal from Watchmen. And so I decided to write a Seven Deadly Sins fan fiction from like a journalized format, and it's basically a story about Jericho writing a suicide letter, because she can't be with Bond. And somebody requested to me that I write a follow up chapter of Bond finding that note and stopping Jericho just in time. But I actually was going to do that, but like I don't know if I can because you know I don't know how I could do that in a satisfying way because in that version of the story, Bond and Elaine are inseparable. So I would have to be like, Bond would have to go up to Jericho and be like, "Oh, this isn't worth it. You'll find somebody," or I'd have to have them be together, and at the sake of Elaine. So it's like I don't see any way I could write a second chapter of that story without it, kind of seeming cheesy or pissing people off. At the same time, I say it's a little weird that I'm leaving a story like that off on Jericho possibly killing herself. But as it stands, I don't know if I could ever write a proper follow up chapter to that without coming off as corny. So I don't want to write any corny as fuck stories. So I don't know. I mean, fan fictions in general are pretty corny usually. And there's plenty of fanfiction couples I've never written a story about that I really like. Like I love Spider Man and MJ from the MCU Spider Man movies. I love Hamish and Effie from Hunger Games. I like stuff like that. Um, and I'm trying out new things right now. Because like I mentioned that my Bond and Jericho stuff was some of the first Bond and Jericho fan fictions being written, and I don't know if I was the direct cause of the Bond and Jericho boom because like it feels like everybody's writing Bond and Jericho fan fiction nowadays, and like nobody was writing it before I started writing so many. So I don't know if like I was the one who started that or if like that was just coincidence when I started writing it and then everybody else did. Maybe the show started to get more popular after season 2 came out and then season 3, certain periods, the stories actually do better than other times because like if I write a Seven Deadly Sins fan fiction right when a season premieres, then like everybody's gonna read it. If I write it like in between, like in the long gaps between seasons, they're not gonna get as many reads. But again, I write things when I feel like they should be written. I don't want to write a fan fiction. I don't want like schedulized writing fan fictions. Like I'm not gonna say like, oh, tomorrow I should work on that, and then the next day I should work on this couple. No, I write when I feel like it should be written. Which is why I didn't write like exclusively Batman Returns fan fictions the last month. I took a break and I wrote a Superman Lives fan fiction called Uncertain. For those of you who don't know, Superman Lives is Tim Burton's ultimately canceled Superman project starring Nicolas Cage from the late '90s, and I made a pair of videos here on the network talking about it. And so I decided to write a fan fiction called Uncertain about what I think that version of the couple would have been like. Lois Lane and Clark Kent, that is. And I think it came out kind of good. I mean, I had to improvise because like nobody had ever written that couple before, and that movie, of course, never came out, so I had to improvise. And I've tried out with video game fan fictions before as well. Like, as you all know, I recently wrote a Half Life 2 fan fiction called The One Free Man and Woman, which is something I did because I replayed Half Life 2 recently and both of the episodes, and it helped me remember how much I liked it. So I drew like a fan art because I'm trying to learn how to draw. So I drew a fan art for it, and then I decided to write a fan fiction for it. The drawing was I named it One Free Man and Woman, and then I decided to write a fan fiction with the exact same title. And I think that the fan fiction actually came out real good. And a couple of people have told me that they think it's really good. It's not my first venture into video game fan fictions, of course. I did write a fan fiction about another Valve property, that being Portal. I wrote Chell and GLaDOS together as a couple. I can't for the life of me remember what the title of that story was called. And I personally don't think it's my best story. I think it's far from it. But because I had been reading Chell and GLaDOS fan fiction out of curiosity as more than anything else, and I decided to give it a try. I don't particularly think I did a good job or anything like that, but I don't know. Maybe some people will like it. Maybe some of you will get a kick out of it. I'm not sure. And before that, I had written a Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag fanfiction based on Edward Kenway and Mary Read. And I remember that one was called Shipwrecked. And I actually changed the cover of that story because, like, the original cover of the story was just a blue cover and it had, like, a white Assassin's Creed logo with a pirate ship steering wheel in the center of it, and that was basically the cover. And I thought it was a simple cover, whatever. But like a year later, when I started using fan art in my covers instead of like stuff from the actual game or whatever, I just basically decided to give the cover a complete makeover. I got this beautiful ocean background. I made the title go up and down the spine of the cover, which I really like that cover. I think that my shipwreck cover is probably my best fan fiction cover. I'm almost starting to regret not putting it on the still frame that you guys are looking at. Uh, so I almost kind of wish I put that there because it's a beautiful cover. I really like how it came out. I used some really beautiful Edward and Mary Read fan art as well, and I just think it's my best looking cover. And I read my shipwreck fan fiction not too long ago, and I could not believe how good it was. Like, I don't mean to sound selfish or whatever, but like I forgot like how much work I put into Shipwrecked. And looking back now, I'm like, man, I used to be really good at writing stuff like this. And nowadays, I don't think my fan fictions are as good as they used to be, which is why I've been trying to experiment with different things and kind of get back into my groove a little bit. Let me know if you guys think my newer fan fiction is worse than my older stuff, or vice versa, or something like that. Just let me know what you guys think of everything. Um, and I've experimented with a couple other things before. Like I wrote a Powerpuff Girls fan fiction once. It was one of my very rare non-romantic fan fictions. Because I've tried writing non-romantic fan fictions in the past, and I just don't like how they come out usually. And also, they hardly ever get any views. I remember my Powerpuff Girls fanfiction is called We're Hardcore Now. And it's basically about the Powerpuff Girls becoming evil, and the professor has to become Power Prof again and, save them from destroying all these villains in like a mass genocide. I actually really liked how that story came out, but again, it's a non-romantic fan fiction, so I wasn't expecting it to get a ton of reads. I just wanted to write one because I regained my love of Powerpuff Girls around that time, and so it was what it was, and I like how it came out. I thought it was pretty damn good. I hope that somebody out there enjoys it as much as I do. One of these days, I'll probably make a video about Powerpuff Girls and why I really like that show. I have not watched the rebooted Powerpuff Girls. I heard that it was crap, and I'm probably going to take people's words for it because the people I've heard it from are people that have been generally right on everything else I've seen them critique. So I'm going to take their word for it and assume that the recent reboot of Powerpuff Girls is just as terrible as they're saying it is. They crossed over with Teen Titans Go. I do not like Teen Titans Go, so I'm going to assume that it's crap. That's all I got to say about that. Uh, so yeah, that's how it is. Nowadays, I took like a long break from writing fan fiction. I've gone on a number of hiatuses from fan fiction, and some of my stories have been affected because of that. Like, I remember I wrote this solo reader fan fiction called Family Trouble, and it took me an entire year to write. I kept going off and on again with writing chapters of that damn story. I started writing it in the summer of 2017, and I didn't end up finishing it until the next summer. Luckily I didn't have any sort of project like that this time. Like I didn't start any fan fictions last summer and finish it this summer, so that's good at least. I kind of started to fall out of love with fan fiction in 2018 because I was going through so many issues of my own, and like I started to lose interest in all of that stuff. I stopped kind of watching anime. The last anime I watched was Full Metal Alchemist, and there's no real obvious couples in Full Metal Alchemist that ever pop out at me. And like I wanted to write a Death Note fan fiction, but again, there's no obvious couples that pop out at me. And I know some of you guys might be screaming like, why don't you write a fan fiction about like Elle and Light? And the thing is, I don't like writing gay parents. It's not that I have a problem with gay people. I don't have a problem with gay people. I'm not gay, but I don't have a problem with them or anything like that. It's just I'm not. It's not my cup of tea. I don't like writing stuff that I don't really understand all that much, which is why I've never written a lemon before because I don't have that kind of experience. So I don't write lemons. I only write tease fan fiction, and I think that that's better. I think that's kind of my style. Maybe some people will want me to write a lemon one day, and maybe I will. But for now, I don't think I'm going to write a lemon anytime soon, so please don't ask me to. um, and I don't do like gay fan fiction. I've toyed around with the idea of lesbian stories before. I was going to write a fan fiction for Wonder Woman and Doctor Poison based on the 2017 Wonder Woman movie because nobody else has done that, I don't think. But I couldn't write a version of that story that I liked. So I kept scrapping ideas, and eventually I just kind of lost interest in writing that couple. I had the idea of writing the Elsa Frozen lesbian fanfiction, but I couldn't find anybody that I thought was right to pair her with. I almost paired her with Jack Frost, but that's been done to death, and I didn't like it, so I decided to just scrap that whole thing because I didn't want to look like a copying some bitch. Um, um, so I didn't do that. And so yeah, I mean I've experimented with lesbian stuff before, but like I know that being a male writer, I'm gonna get a lot of criticism if I try to write a lesbian story. And I have written lesbian stories before. Like on my Wattpad account, there's a story or a collection of stories called Our Beautiful Cruel World that I wrote last year, and it's just a compilation of all my various short stories. And one of my short stories is called Queens of the Pond, and I actually really like how Queens of the Pond came out because I actually rewrote that entire thing and made it into a play in my creative writing class during my senior year. I liked it so much I just reinvented it. And I really like that story. It's a lesbian fairy tale. I really like how it came out. I'm not going to spoil it here. If you guys want to read it, please go read it yourself on my Wattpad account. I'm going to leave my account in the description down below. If you don't want to look in the description, then the link for it is also on my channel banner here on the Rinzler Network. And if you're already on Wattpad and you don't feel like clicking the link, then just search up Rinzler Hero in the search bar, and then you'll find me. Picture my dumbass face smiling. I haven't changed that my logo to an R like it is on YouTube yet. Meaning to do it. I'll do it soon, I promise. And that's gonna be real outdated by the time some of you guys watch this video. It'll probably be long since changed. Maybe this logo that you're seeing in the still frame won't even be my logo anymore. This channel has gone through so many identity changes. So who knows really. So nowadays I'm kind of just experimenting with my fan fictions. I regained my love of fan fictions a couple months ago. I decided to basically rewrite one of my favorite stories, Pygmalion and Galatea, because every version I've ever read of that story always makes Pygmalion out to be this, jackass woman hater. And I saw a deeper meaning to the story of like Pygmalion being this tragic figure, or whatever. And that was how he's supposed to be portrayed in the original story. People kept misinterpreting him as a woman hater, so I was like, man, I'm gonna write this in a way that does Pygmalion more justice. So I rewrote that story. It's the only story I've ever written where the name Rinzler is actually on the cover, which is interesting. I started to realize that my name is blocking large parts of the cover, so I stopped putting my name on covers usually. Um, and anyway, so I wrote the Pygmalion Galatea fanfiction. I still really like how that came out. It's my favorite story of my religion because I'm Hellenistic in real life, which means I believe in the Greek gods and all those legends and stories that you've heard about in the Percy Jackson series or you've heard about in school. I believe in that stuff. That's my religion. It's my beliefs. So I wanted to rewrite my favorite personal romantic story from my religion, and that's Pygmalion and Galatea. I personally think that I did a good job. I hope that other people think I did a good job from what I've heard. I've gotten all positive feedback so far, so that's good. And just lately I've been trying to be a bit more creative, make more YouTube videos. I've been experimenting with series, with A Song of Ice and Fire and, KBW and Drake and Josh and the Tim Burton stuff. And, I got plans of possibly doing a Powerpuff Girls series. I'm definitely making a series of videos on Half-Life one of these days. I'm planning on getting back into gaming videos. Right now in real life, I'm learning how to draw, and I'm getting back into the fan fiction stuff full time. I'm just trying to find my creative edge again that I think has been lost as of late because I've been so depressed and stressed out and stuff like that. So I'm just trying to find my creative edge again, if that makes any sense. Um, and so, yeah, I'm just kind of experimenting with what I want to do in the fan fiction community. I rediscovered my love in Batman Returns. I wanted to write Batman Returns stuff, so I've written like 5 or 6 Batman Return fan fictions over the last month. Drives one of my friends crazy. I keep sending her the new stories. She keeps telling me she'll read them, but she never does, and I have a feeling she might never will. So, I don't know when I'll ever write a Seven Deadly Sins story again. I am going to rewatch that anime one of these days. When season 4 comes out, I'll probably rewatch the whole thing. I did not see the movie yet. I didn't bother looking up the reviews because I know it's good. Everything with Seven Deadly Sins is good. So, I'll eventually rewatch the anime and I'll probably write more fan fictions after I'm done. When I have more story to go off of. But for now, I think I'm just going to not write any more of those. I'll probably continue writing more Batman Returns stuff, more Half-Life 2 stuff. Maybe I'll write Hunger Games. I don't know. Especially after that prequel series comes out, I might have more to work with. So who knows what the future holds for me and my fan fictions. I've I have a bit of a fan base going on. I don't want to let that fan base down. I feel like I've let them down in the past by like not writing what they want me to write and not giving them the kind of stories that I should have been giving them. I was giving them all these, quote unquote mature Seven Deadly Sins stories where Jericho doesn't end up with Bond. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, this is no fun. Bond and Jericho should end up together in a story titled Bond X Jericho. So I started putting them together again, starting with Sin and Night. And I promise that any Bond and Jericho fanfiction I write from this point on, they're the ones getting together, not Elaine. Screw Elaine. Not putting her in my fan fictions anymore if I can help it. It's not that I don't like Elaine, it's just if it's a Bond and Jericho fan fiction, then Elaine's just going to get in the way. So I'm probably not going to write any more stories with Elaine in it. But, and I don't think I'm going to write any more Superman Lives stories because Uncertain, I think, it was an experimental thing. I think it was good, but I can't see myself writing anything else because I don't know what Superman would have been like in action. I don't know. That was all guesswork. I just expected him to be kind of an awkward, nerdier guy, which is what I talked about in my Beauty of Superman Lives video here on the network. I expected he was kind of like a reclusive, nerdier character, and that's sort of how I wrote him in Uncertain. So I don't think I'll ever write a Superman Lives story again unless I have like more to go off of. If I come up with new ideas, maybe, but I don't think I'm going to write any more. Batman Returns, I might not write any more fan fiction for that couple for a long time because I've written so much of them already. Seven Deadly Sins, I already said I'm not going to write any more of them until I rewatch the anime, which will probably not be for a long time. And as for Half-Life, I'm probably going to be writing mostly about that for a while. Maybe I'll write Hunger Games. Maybe I'll write Percy Jackson. I've been considering that couple for a little while. Percy and Annabeth, not Percabeth. That's not my cup of tea. Don't call them that, please. But anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in to the show tonight. I know I've been rambling on for a while. That's what I get for not scripting anything. But if you guys enjoyed this format of video of me just talking about stuff, then let me know. I am planning on doing more of this stuff just so I can get stuff off my chest, and tell you guys what I'm all about. If you guys enjoyed this video, remember to give it a thumbs up. Share this video with all of your friends and all of your various social media platforms. Let me know in the comments down below what you liked and didn't like. Check out the description below to go on Wattpad and read some of these fan fictions I've been talking about in this video. Ring that notification bell to hear about any future videos like this or any other video I make. And I'll see all you dudes and chicks in the next video.